Isabel here. We are back for some more r/no sleeps. Today we are going to be reading. My students submitted the most disturbing living history project I've ever seen. I know it's not dark out because it's almost 11 a.m., but I'm kind of trying to get on a horror kick so I can have the motivation to write my horror stories. I still have work later, so I'll probably make more of these videos after then, depending on how I feel, because I've also been trying to get back into writing, because I haven't been able to in a while. But yeah, without further ado, let's just get right into it. This is not very long, I don't think, but yeah. One of my least favorite parts about being a middle school history teacher is the bullshit living history assignments we give at the end of the school year. At the end of every school year, kids are supposed to sit with their grandparents and videotape, voice record, or transcribe their oldest memory from posterity, and for an easy way to bring up their GPA. I've been doing this for 17 years, and when I collected the projects this time around, I assumed they would be as dull, if not duller than usual. This had not been a particularly bright class. So I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and prepared for a long night of I only owned 2 pairs of pants when I was your age, and my brother got beat with a newspaper for hitting a baseball into the neighbor's yard. And of course, these projects were prepped with innocent old person comments that were so horribly sexist and racist you'll just have to laugh. Now, I had a girl in my class whom I will call Olivia. She was pudgy, quiet, and proved herself a consistent B student. I expected her project to be unremarkable as her, and perhaps that's why I was so profoundly disturbed by what I witnessed that night. Olivia had submitted 2 discs for some reason, so I began the one marked interview. My screen hicked up twice before a grainy image of a living room came into view. This place was a hoarder's hell. Olivia was curled up on the armchair, clutching a notebook and looking like a scared animal. Across from her seat, a man with a somber countenance, smoking a cigarette, and staring at her expectantly. "Go ahead," a woman's voice from behind the camera. Olivia's owlish eyes flashed towards the screen, then back to the man. "I'm here with my great-uncle Stefan," she began almost inaudibly. "He's going to tell us about his oldest memories from being in the army." Great-uncle Stefan looked like he'd rather be in a goddamn trench in the moment, but waited patiently for the questions to begin. Not surprisingly, Olivia read verbatim from the suggested question sheet I'd handed out to the students. He answered her curtly. Once or twice I heard her mother whisper, "Speak up, Olivia," from behind the camera. Typical boring shit. So I was intrigued when Olivia set down the notebook and asked, "Did you like being in the army?" That was totally off script. Great-uncle Stefan emitted a chain smoker's wheeze. "Nope. Glad to get out of my town, though." "Where did you go?" "Balkans." "Uh-huh," she said. I doubted she knew what the Balkans were, and my suspicion was confirmed when she asked, "Was Balkans very different from here?" "Yes." Mom cleared her throat from behind the camera, perhaps encouraging Great-uncle Stefan to be a little more forthcoming. But Olivia seemed genuinely interested. "Uncle Stefan, what was your very worst memory from the army?" The old man crushed his cigarette in the ashtray, then slowly lifted himself out of the chair. "I'll be back," he mumbled. The camera cut off. When the screen flashed back on, everything was the same except Great-uncle Stefan had several pieces of paper in plastic sleeves laid atop the crap sitting on his coffee table. One he held in his hand. "I was a kid when I enlisted," he said, looking at Olivia. "Your brother's age," he told her. Olivia nodded. "I never saw combat. Both of my deployments were to cities in Eastern Europe that had been destroyed by civil wars. Everything was a mess, and I felt like a janitor, for fuck's sake." Ahem, Mom coughed. Great-uncle Stefan sighed and looked at his paper. "My unit was assigned to a school that had been obliterated by all the violence. Broken windows, caved-in rooms, and for some reason, the part that got to me the most was the school that had been like this for years before we got there. No one had lifted a finger to fix it. I saw kids walk by it on their way to go beg for money or whatever shit they did." The camera dipped towards the floor as I heard Mom whisper harshly at Great-uncle Stefan. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but it wasn't hard to imagine. Do you want to hear this goddamn story or not? I heard him bark in response. You better let me tell it how I want. Mom, Olivia chimed. Please stop interrupting. Are you presenting this in front of the class? No, Mom, we're just handing it to the teacher. I'm sure he's heard the word shit before, Great Uncle Stephen contributed helpfully. I wasn't a he, as a matter of fact, but other than that, the statement was accurate. The camera was lifted, and a couple of blurry focus adjustments, the camera was shot as before. I'm talking way too much anyway, he grumbled. He lifted a piece of paper in his hand close to his face. In the basement, I found this letter, and I didn't know what it said, but I had a buddy of mine translate it. So I'm going to read it now, and then I'll tell you what I saw in that basement. A chill ran down my spine. Mom zoomed in on Great Uncle Stefan and his letter. He pulsed his hands. His palest hands trembled as he held up the paper, and this is what he read. Dear Sir, I never loved my country. So many of these skirmishes are born from patriotism, a power to struggle from a shards of a once great empire, but I do not care what name my home has a map on. This fighting is senseless, and I stay far away from it as I can. It was not these attacks and disorganized violence that took the lives of my wife and child. It was illness. Mercifully, it happened so quickly for the baby. Naja suffered for longer. I watched in horror, knowing I could do nothing for them. My only solace is that I was there for them every step of the way. I stopped going back to work one day, and no one came after me. I doubt they noticed that I was gone. Since the school was simply across the field, visible from my window, it would have been easy to go for a few hours each day and come home quickly to care for them. But what was the point? All I did was clean the floors. I was as useless to the world as I was to my family. I tried to take Nadja to the hospital, but the journey was too long and taxing. So I brought her home, and she died that night. After Nadja and the baby were gone, I don't remember much. I didn't leave my hovel, barely ate and slept, thought many times of taking my own life. Tempting though it was, I felt paralyzed by my own helplessness. The one thing that kept me sane was my radio. I never turned it off once. Even though I didn't listen to the words being said, in fact the channel I got, the clearest was in English, I think, which I don't speak a lick of. But the voices, the music, and the true acknowledgement that life existed beyond this violence sustained me. I have no idea how long passed before I saw the light of day again. I was dizzy from hunger, so finding food was my priority. My radio came with me, of course. Since I first hauled myself up, has gone everywhere with me. It talks to me as I sleep and as I awake. I don't know what it's saying, but I know I would die without it. Once I had some water and food, it occurred to me that the only thing left to do was go back to work. So I did. The following morning, I simply returned to school where I was a janitor and got back to work. Nobody made a big deal out of it. Like I said, Nadja had been sick for a long time, and those who worked at the school knew it. I appreciated that no one had pestered me to come back to work during the hardest days of my life. The teachers never said much to me, but we smiled at each other in the halls, and the mutual respect was perhaps the reason I decided to come back at all. The place had gone to the dogs without me, so I simply grabbed a broom and rags from my closet to set to cleaning. Everyone is grateful to have me back, I know. And the best part is that nobody minds my radio. I bring it with me everywhere, and to keep the volume low enough to not disrupt the students. No one has ever complained. In fact, I suspect they liked it. The schoolhouse is not very big, but it does require a lot of maintenance. The floors are always sticky and stained, so I spend most of my time mopping. Kids made messes. I guess that's why I'm still in business. Sometimes I have to move things around to make sure I get every spot on the floor beautiful and clean, but I take pride in that. And the repairs! The school always needs tune-ups here and there, and I am happy to help. Some days I'm reconstructing the desk that broke as I whistled along the radio. Other times I handle more serious and structural issues. Days when I have work like this, I feel truly instrumental, like a cog in a larger machine. How could a school survive without me? It took me a long time, but once again I feel like I have a purpose. There is a larder behind the school that is full of preserved food. In lieu of my payment, I am allowed to take as much food as I need. The arrangement is fine. What would I do with money anyway? I used to bring the food back to my house just from one field away from the school, but when I started sleeping in the basement, no one seemed to notice. The school is special to me, and I could not leave it unguarded. When I am besieged when I am besieged with memories of my wife and baby, I turn up the volume to my radio to drown out such thoughts, and it works for me every time. Except this morning, because this morning I woke up to dead silence. I finally examined the radio to see what had happened. I honestly cannot tell you how many days in a row I have been using it. Did it simply live out its life and die naturally? I spent my entire day trying to fix it. Most of the time I have been crying, and I am losing my mind without it. I have been giving myself until sundown. If I cannot fix it by then, I am going to take my life. I am writing this because the sunlight is starting to die, and I know what my fate shall be. I have thought about taking one last walk through the halls of my school, saying goodbye to the students and the teachers. I know I will be missed. But I cannot bring myself to leave this room. I cannot go anywhere knowing that my radio is dead in there. There are no more tears in me. It feels like now I can't catch my breath. I vomited what little food I had in my stomach, and I am growing dizzy again. Like I did after Nanja died. I am not long for this world. But before I take my life, I've closed the door to this room and stuck a chair beneath the handle. It is the only room in the basement that has a small casement that lets in just enough light for me to see what I'm doing. If anyone is kind enough to come look for me, should not be met with a gruesome sight. Perhaps when they will see the door is locked, the door is blocked, smell my rotting body, and simply forget that I existed. But I have placed both my radio and this note outside the door. So, kind sir, if you're reading this, I have one humble request. Please fix it. Save my radio. It did not deserve to die in its sleep, and I am ashamed that I could not revive it. Now I am ready to join Nadja and little Ludmila in heaven. I hope this school can find another gender who loves it and cares for it the way that I do. The hour is now. Do not forget my radio. Stanislav. When Mom zoomed back out, Olivia had tears in her eyes. Thank you for sharing, Uncle Stefan, Mom said, her voice choked. I think we have enough. Wait, Olivia chirped. He said there's more. What did you find? Before Uncle Stefan could open his mouth, the image disappeared. My jaw dropped. What? Was that it? What did Great Uncle Stefan see? I probably remembered that there was a second disc. This one was unmarked, but I hoped to contain the rest of the interview. There was no video, only audio, and the voice that started up was Olivia's. Hi, Miss Garrity. Sorry about my mom, but she refused to record the rest of what my uncle was saying, but I asked him to continue secretly and recorded the story as a voice memo on my phone. I remember you said earlier this year that history is written by the people who win wars. She sucked in a breath and commenced crying. But everyone's history is important, and even if they are sad, pathetic people, and even if they never won a single thing in their life, I haven't slept through the night since I finished this project, but you have to hear what my uncle has to say. There were tears in my eyes, too. The sincerity of her voice, of her words, were beautiful. I was also flattered by that she remembered some trite phrase I threw around because that was my history teacher said to me. Before I got too sappy over it, the audio began again. Fine, came Mom's frustrated voice. If you want to hear the rest of the story, fine, but that is not appropriate for a school project. Let me finish, Great Uncle Stefan snapped. If it's too much for you, help yourself to a snack in the kitchen, but Olivia wants to know what happened. I heard her mother mumble something and walk away. Olivia and her uncle were alone, and I imagined her looking at him unexpectedly. So, did you find the radio, or did it get ruined when the school got blown up? He rasped, and I heard a distant click of a lighter. That letter, he began slowly, had a date on it. What date? She inquired hungrily. It was dated 2 weeks before we started rebuilding the school. Didn't you say the school had been destroyed like 2 years ago? Yes, replied Great Uncle Stefan. It had been. Sorry, I got sidetracked. There was a silence as I felt goosebumps on my arms. The images that came to my mind were almost too overwhelming to express, but Great Uncle Stefan put them into words effortlessly. Clearly, he had spent his whole life thinking about it. This man, this Stanislav, went to a vandalized, falling apart schoolhouse and cleaned up blood and rubble like it was spilled drinks and dust. He smiled at dead bodies in the hallway and believed that they were smiling back at him because they liked his radio. He moved around corpses so he could sweep the ground under them, and the roof was half collapsed. So when it rained, he must have gone soaking wet, but it was so obvious that he didn't feel a thing. I could hear Olivia crying steadily. I found the larder he was talking about. It was all prickled, preserved food, and tasted like shit, and most of the stuff was moldy. Did you see a dead body? Yes. Hanging from the ceiling, but still amazingly lifelike. He wasn't rotting away. This happened years ago. Did he look peaceful? She asked, a chord of desperation in her voice. Couldn't tell you. The smell was rank, and his face was blue, and his eyes were bulging like this. I imagined him demonstrating. And the radio? Olivia wept. I heard great Uncle Stefan take a long drag of his cigarette. It was there, all right, and it was still on. Wow. That's crazy. I mean, there's a movie, God, I forgot what it was called. It was, God, what was it called? It was like, it's on Netflix. It's called like, shit. I forgot what it was called, but it was about where this man had like, I think it was with his daughter or something, and then like his daughter's, I think it's called like The Shattered or something, where his daughter like went missing. So he goes on this entire journey of trying to find his daughter who disappeared, but in reality he accidentally had killed his daughter. This kind of reminds me of it, where it's just like, where this guy lost his wife and child, and then he just fucking went crazy, thought he was going to a school where he was so loved, when in reality it was a broken school where everyone was dead, and he thought they were alive. And like, it's so crazy, and so like fascinating of what the human brain does to cope with such an intense like trauma like that. Like, you go through enough shit that your brain just, I mean, it either shatters or like it finds a way to make you cope. Like, it's so crazy, but it's such like a fascinating thing to me. And the fact that he thought that his radio had died, but it wasn't. Like, it's just, that's just crazy. I don't even know. I mean, I've never heard of like any living history. I mean, I'm sure my dad has. I mean, my dad has stories about, I think it was like my great great grandpa. He's told me that he was one of the people that worked on the Hoover Dam, which is pretty cool. He told me stories about his grandpa and his grandma and how they got together. And then, yeah, but I mean, my grandpa on my mom's side died before I got to like, I don't know, talk to him about any of like history stuff. I also don't really have anyone that, I mean, the only one that's lived past fucking 50 is my great grandpa, and he's 90, but crazy. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Everything's down in the description. You know what to do. Love you guys, and I'll see you soon. Bye.